Good afternoon. I'm Richard Sandler. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Milken Family Foundation and a director here at the Milken Institute. As we end the week of the first virtual Milken Institute Global Conference, I have the privilege of interviewing Governor Gavin Newsom of California over the next 30-some minutes. Prior to becoming governor of California, Governor Newsom was Lieutenant Governor of California. Before that, he was the mayor of the city of San Francisco and had other positions, I think, in San Francisco, Board of Supervisors, even before that. So, Governor, first, let me welcome you to our virtual conference, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Great to be with you. And Richard, don't forget, I started in the private sector, one part-time employee, Pat Kelly, started a small little wine store, grew it to 23 little businesses up and down the state. I say that to impress none of you, but to press upon you a life outside of politics and a passion for entrepreneurialism. Forgive me.
Okay, not at all. Thank you. And also thank you for wearing the blue tie today. I think that we both got that memo and it works out just fine. Actually, I'm glad you said that because my first question is really to tell us a little bit about how you got here. I mean, you spent a lot of your adult life in public office. When did you first think about it? Is it something you thought about as a child? And what put you on this career path?
Willie Brown put me on this career path. He was turned out of the California State Assembly, had to go back home, figure out his career, decided to run for mayor of his hometown. When he became mayor, he appointed me. I just opened a small restaurant in San Francisco and a wine store. And to be fully transparent, I was doing a little fundraising for him. So he got to know me a little bit and then tapped me to be the president of the Parking and Traffic Commission in San Francisco. I was 26 years old, 25, 26. So inspiration, desperation, inspired by the opportunity, desperate to figure it out. And that was the beginning of a life in politics that led me quite literally to where I'm sitting here today, which is the same desk that Ronald Reagan used as governor of California in the same office. It's a humbling journey, an extraordinary gift to be in this position.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I do believe that Governor President Reagan was a real inspiration to all of us of what leadership really is about as an American leader. So I'm glad you brought that up. So for those in the audience that don't understand how complex and daunting your position is, let me just state a few quick statistics. Governor Newsom is the chief executive of a state that has the largest economy of any state in the union. An economy of over $3.2 trillion. If California was a country, it would be, I believe, the sixth largest economy in the world, right behind Germany and ahead of India. We have the largest population of any state in the country with over 39 million people. So if this wasn't enough, in the past year, Governor Newsom, you've had to deal with COVID-19, the effects it has had on public health, and upon the economy. A large budget deficit is now looming. You've had to deal with horrific and record fires that are still burning and have burnt over 4 million acres, which is an area larger than many states in this union. In fact, I saw there was some notice today about a request you had made to the federal government for some help in that area that hopefully will be forthcoming at some point. We've had to deal with the important social and racial justice issues that have confronted all of us in our country. Besides that, of course, you have to deal with the worsening homelessness problem, a controversial ethnic studies program, et cetera, et cetera. Let me ask you this, Governor. With all of this happening and unexpected, obviously, how has this affected your thinking, your plans, your priorities, and how do you balance all the competing interests that many of these issues present to you?
Well, I think it's only accelerated my thinking plans and priorities. It's only sharpened my focus and energy. It's only made me, think more entrepreneurially and with a greater sense of urgency and intentionality. It was just 7 months ago I was announcing California running its largest budget, reserves in its state's history, second bond rating upgrade in a year, the highest we had seen in 20 years, 120 consecutive months of net job creation, 3.8% average GDP growth over the last 5 years, outperforming the nation. We were number one again in innovation in the Bloomberg Index, more scientists, researchers, Nobel laureates, more patents, more venture capital out of this state than any other state in the nation by far. Finest system of higher education anywhere in the world, announcing another record surplus, not just record reserves. That was 7 months ago. As you rightfully point out, a lot's happened in 7 months. 4.1 million acres have now burned in the state of California. Unprecedented summer, the hottest recorded August in California history, hottest recorded September in world history. We had the hottest world record temperature ever recorded in the state of California, 130 degrees just 9 weeks ago in Death Valley, California. Unprecedented 11,000 lightning strikes over just a 72-hour period. The hot's getting hotter, dries are much drier. And with all these atmospheric rivers, the wets are getting a lot wetter. And so we're dealing with Mother Nature, who's joined the conversation as it relates to climate change here in California, as you rightly point out, with the forest fires and the wildfires. We're addressing a global pandemic, though we, I think, have handled ourselves fairly well. 2.5% positivity rate over the last 14 days. We were the first state to move with a stay-at-home order. We've been led by science and data, not ideology. We're making progress in that space. We have led on racial and social justice reform, police use of force, issues that are near and dear to me as it relates to broader criminal justice reform that was long underway, but we leaned into in response to what's happening on our streets. We're the most diverse economy in America, 40% Hispanic, 27% of the state foreign born. This is a pluralistic society that practices pluralism, a truly universal state. And I couldn't be more proud to be the governor of what now is the fifth largest economy in the world that still is punching above its weight. And despite the deficit, despite all the situational challenges, still has a balance sheet second to none in the country.
Wow. So you're dealing with a lot, obviously. Let's talk about COVID-19, which is probably foremost on almost everybody's mind these days. So as we get to the point where things level off, and we find that even with cases increasing, hospitalizations are not going up at this point. The effect on the economy and people's lives has been tremendous, as you well know. So in balancing the interests of when to open up and keeping the economy going and it affects lives and still in protecting people, what are some of the things that you've learned over the last several months that are affecting that decision? And what do you see happening here in California in the next 2 to 4 months?
Well, it's an incredible pandemic-induced recession. I mean, the reality is in January, late January, we were announcing close to $10 billion surplus. We advertised it at 6.6. It was actually closer to a $10 billion budget surplus. We had the lowest unemployment in our state's history. Fast forward, we lost 1.62 million jobs between April and September. We just had some new jobs numbers came out this morning, rather sluggish, though we represented about 14.5% of the nation's net new jobs. But again, it's a very sluggish return back to work. We still have 11% unemployment. Just remarkable what can happen just like that. And so, look, I'm very sensitive. Look, again, I'm not intellectualizing this. I've got wineries, hotels, restaurants. The impact to the hospitality industry, to low-wage workers has been disproportionate here in the state of California. I'm living this in very raw and emotional, not just intellectual terms. So I'm well aware of the mandates we put out as a state, the mandates that are put out by local health officers at the local level, the need and desire for people to get back to work and open their doors. At the same time, to your question, you got to balance public health if you're committed to sustainable economic growth and recovery, not situational economic growth and recovery. So what I learned, specific to your question, is the errant way that we reopened after the first few months that we had held the line. We never had a big surge like they had on the East Coast. We had stable ICU rates, hospitalization rates, positivity and case rates over a month and a half, 2-month period. As we modified our stay-at-home order, people weren't wearing masks. As we modified our stay-at-home order, everyone said, well, you put out guidelines, that means go. And people started to revert back to their original form. And as a consequence, we started to see mixing and we started to see behavior that actually led to not a second wave, but a continuation of the first wave that we were able to temper. And so as we have now tamed this growth and we are now reopening, we're doing it much more methodically and we're doing it much more stubbornly, but in a way that I believe will ultimately aid our economic recovery by not having the fits and starts that an opening and closing that I think is very likely to persist and be advanced in other parts of the state as you're seeing the rise in case rates and positivity over the course of the next few months as we enter back into the winter season, as people enter back indoors and we start to see some transmission rates go back up. We're going to keep a health first focus in order to advance our economic paradigm.
So, you stated you're relying on science and data. Okay, so where do you get your information today? You talked about higher education in this state. Obviously, we're very blessed here with some of the greatest universities in the country that have done a lot of work in this area. I saw that a scientist that was working on testing, Jennifer Doudna at Berkeley, just got a Nobel Prize. What source resources are you able to tap into as you have to make these very difficult decisions?
It's a treasure trove. Where do you begin? Where do you end? I mean, we have, as I said, more scientists, researchers, more Nobel laureates, 3 more just announced the last 2 weeks, emanating from the finest, I don't even say among the finest public education system anywhere on the globe, and some of the greatest research institutions anywhere in the world. And I didn't even include Caltech and Stanford and the other private institutions in that. And so look, we have more therapeutics in this state. We're the birthplace of biotech, life sciences. And as relates to advisory committee, we formalized one in the therapeutic space. We have advisory committees as it relates to contact tracing and testing. We're announcing next Monday an unprecedented partnership. We just built out a lab, hired 500 people, the largest epidemiological testing lab of its type anywhere in the United States, down in Southern California, that we're going to do a ribbon cutting next Monday to double the amount of tests the state can do. And that came from organic connections within the state and human capital within the state and our research partners, our counselors and advisors that are part and parcel of many different committees that we put together. But also, dare I say, at peril, I'll put up our healthcare system up against the best. I come from the Bay Area. I come from the city and county of San Francisco that led on HIV and AIDS. We weren't introduced to Dr. Fauci with this pandemic. We had known him decades ago. We know what cultural competency means. We recognize one size does not fit all. And so our modalities of treatment and our engagement in terms of the community response has been marked by our response to HIV and AIDS and our response to community medicine and community clinics and the development of therapeutics and vaccines, but again, led by science, sober in the reality that we tend to be a little over exuberant at times with safety and efficacy of many of these modalities. And on Monday, this Monday, not next Monday, I'll be announcing some of our new efforts on how we as a state, one of the 6 states partnering with the CDC, our federal government, will be advancing our protocols on the distribution of vaccines. Again, also announcing another advisory committee in that space as well.
Great. Well, thank you. So you talked about where we were at the beginning of the year, where we are now. What I'm saying now is I get calls from friends of mine in Texas and Florida telling me about what's going on in California. Unbelievable number of people are looking for homes here. I know a lot of people in businesses that are fleeing the state. Does this concern you? What is your thoughts about that? And what would you like to see happen in that area?
There hasn't been a decade of my life where that hasn't been asked by someone from Milken Institute in a forum like this or some other forum. I mean, go back. This would be kind of fun for folks. There's a wonderful Time magazine piece. They decided not even to do an article on California. They decided to do a whole special edition called, about the California crack up. They talked about deficits, wildfires. They talked about Silicon Valley's over. They talked about the fact that everyone's leaving the state, how the state was browning, forgive the ethnic and racial priming that was being done back then. With all due respect, California has done very well since 1994. We still dominate in the innovation index. Look at what just came out from Bloomberg for the second year. No one does it better than California and Massachusetts. 7 months ago, Again, everyone's complaining about gentrification, cost of living, too much success. Too many people wanting to move in, scarcity, not abundance of housing, 10 people bidding on one house, people coming from all around the world for riches and new beginnings. University of California didn't just leave the state. Stanford didn't get up and leave. Those fundamental constructs are still alive and well. Venture capital is dominating in this state. Those Nobel laureates are testimony to the fact that this state is in very good shape. We've never been the cheapest place to do business. You want to do that's a losing proposition. That's short-termism. What makes California great is its human capital and its capacity to cluster that human capital and work through the boundaries of innovation and entrepreneurial spirit with all of these extraordinary institutions. They are still alive and well. Remember, 7 months ago, we were announcing new surpluses, record reserves, record bond ratings, 120 consecutive months of net job creation, more startups, more folks in that space. And by the way, we are the startup capital still of the world. Innovation is our brand. So I'm very sensitive when a mature company moves a segment of their operation somewhere else. But I'm also proud of Airbnb and Stripe. And I'm proud of companies that are still the most successful, most valuable private companies in this country. I think 5 of the top 5 are in the state of California. Look at all those IPOs just a few months ago. Zoom, a California-based company. Veer Biomedical. I mean, all these incredible IPOs, some of the most successful, just recently coming out of the state of California. So if you want to move, God bless you. You want a cheap place to do business, and you don't want all those attributes? I say we will miss you. But the good news is we're creating an environment and conditions where there'll be 150,000 new folks coming in that have the same mindset of those other innovators and pioneers. I'm long this state, and I'm a little bit angry that folks who have had enormous success in this state, that have reaped tremendous wealth, now are just throwing up their hands because of a pandemic induced challenge situationally and saying, well, I've now had it and I'm leaving. If they want to leave, I'll miss them. But I'll tell you what, we're not going to cede our dominance in innovation and startups. And that's the secret sauce. And I'm proud as a 5th generation Californian to say that, not just as the current and future ex-governor.
Well, Governor, on the next couple of questions, I don't want you to hold back so much. I want to hear how you really feel, okay? So in one of the problems that you've had to deal with, and I think you've had some success with, though, is for those of us that live in the state, see homelessness every day, are concerned about it. But tell us a little bit about the Home Key and the Room Key program and what you think that has done and what that will do in the future with respect to a pretty serious homelessness problem here.
Yeah, the state of California has been nowhere to be found on homelessness. It's never had a homeless policy. It's never been part of the state agenda. We tried to change that last year. I just got here. I haven't been here but 20 months now as governor. We're just winding up, but we did something extraordinary this year in the midst of a recession, in the midst of balancing budgets, by the way, without increasing taxes. There's no wealth tax in California. We're not going to increase income taxes just because a member of the legislature proposes that and it generates headlines. I get all these calls from friends saying, I'm out of here. I think it's led to some of the little bit of histrionics or hysteria, rather, of some, though I get it. California has its strengths and it has its challenges. Not naive. One of them, you're right, foundationally predates the real crisis in this state, besides affordability housing, is the issue of homelessness, though that's connected. And so when I got here, I not only made it a priority, but I made it the entire frame of my State of the State speech. The entire State of the State speech this year was on the issue of housing, homelessness, and mental health. The entire speech, that was all. And we committed to accelerate our efforts, to advance new efforts. We did some amazing things on mental health this year, on parity, on Laura's Law, and advancing more strategies to help people out on the streets and sidewalks. But the Home Key, and I appreciate you bringing it up, is really something unprecedented in our state's history. Just today, I did a call like this in rural California with rural leaders, where we announced $617 million we've distributed since July, $617 million on 71 large-scale homeless housing projects, which are immediate, meaning they're new permanent transition and different models of innovative housing strategies that have to be up and operationalized by the end of the calendar year. So over a 6-month period to advance an unprecedented amount of resources, 45 jurisdictions in this state, thousands and thousands of new units. We waived some of our stubborn environmental CEQA issues related to siting of these projects. And it's the first time the state has been sort of a smash mouth engagement in cities and counties, large and small, rural, Republican, Democrat, to own this issue and to own up to our previous failure. Here's a number, and it's an objective, factual number. 22,203 human beings, 22,203 human beings just since April. We have gotten off the streets and supported in our hotel program called Project Room Key, not Home Key. The state of California has never done anything close to that. I challenge you to find another state in the country that's ever done something near that. That said, we better do more because we got a homeless crisis that's simply unacceptable. And we need more accountability at all levels of government, not just the state, but local, regional, and federal. And we are just getting started. So if you're angry about it, you're right. If you're frustrated about it, welcome. You're part of the chorus. But please know that this state has never been more serious and resolved on dealing with this issue holistically and sustainably than it is now. And we're not using a recession and the lack of federal support as an excuse. We're taking ownership.
Great. Congratulations. And hopefully we will all see the effects of that coming forward here. Let me ask you a question. I've always been concerned about our proposition process we do here in California. We have a lot of propositions on the ballot right now. I've been reading them. I got 2 propositions in 15 and 16, which are to overturn laws that were passed by 2 propositions years ago. They're complex. They're very complex issues. Most voters aren't going to really understand what they are. Is that a good way to legislate? Is there any way to change that system? It certainly predated you and me by a long time, and I'm a lot older than you are.
Yeah, no, direct democracy at steroids. I mean, yeah, we've tended to legislate by fiat and ballot obligations, responsibilities, and costs, but without commensurately providing resources to advance those causes. And so you're right. Look, we've seen the vagaries of this process. We've seen some wonderful work done by the Bruin Institute. Milken helped out in consulting, Think Long Committee, California Forward out here, a bunch of think tanks to help strategize ways that if something does get the requisite signatures, the legislature can mediate with cooler heads and help deliberate a way to get those initiatives off the ballot so we don't have these costly, expensive, special interest laden initiatives out there every 2 years on the California, and for Californians to adjudicate with all their complexities. So there's been a modest amount of reform. You have citizen juries in places like Oregon that are interesting models. Look, we want participation without populism. We want participation that's active. We want citizenships that are not inert. Citizenship is not just the act of voting on election day or paying your taxes. It's about active engagement in the life of your city, state, nation, and the world we're trying to build. And I think what's happened in California is the symptom of the fact that people don't feel listened to or heard, and that our institutions have been taken over by small, well-heeled interests. And it's the cause of these challenges. So let's deal with the root cause, which is finding ways to have people hear their voice and have more choice in terms of their day-to-day engagement in the life of their state and nation. And I think there are a lot of strategies that should be advanced, but finding mediators in that respect and a deliberative process to, again, soften the appetites of the whims of majoritarianism clearly will advance that goal as well.
Okay, well, thank you for giving that answer. I know we're winding down a little bit. There's a couple more questions. I hope we can finish at least those 2. I got about 8 more, but we're not going to get to all of them.
Lightning round.
So let me ask you this. You're the father of 4 children. You're leader of a major state here. What keeps you up at night? What are you most concerned about today? And on the other side, what are you most optimistic about today?
Well, right now it's my 7-year-old that's keeping me up at night because he and his friend made a terrible decision, similar to what I did when I watched The Exorcist late one night. He watched one of those horror movies, and that poor kid cannot sleep. And anyone wants to wire me some help on this, I'm desperate because he's in our bed, keeping us up, not just recently, but quite literally every single night for the last 3 or 4 months. But 4 kids and being a parent, the oldest is 11, my youngest is 4. This is the first week they're starting to get back to school. So I don't need to be nudged on the importance of encouraging our kids back into school for social emotional purposes. And that's not just the kids social emotional. I think it's the parents as well. And the imperative from an economic paradigm of doing that as well. We've got to do it safely. But I think that the greatest stress that I have is the partisanship, the finger pointing, the cheap shots, the personalization of our politics. People look, I don't mind friction, and I appreciate the dialectic, but this has just gone off the deep end. I'm going to give you a proof point of a counter narrative. I don't just say that. I try to practice a little bit of different kind of politics. I'm not trying to be holier than thou, and I'll play into some partisanship certainly during elections. But I just got off the phone quite literally an hour and 10 minutes ago with President Trump, who was on Air Force One. You brought up the issue of disaster declaration, and the president. We reached out. We've developed a relationship, and I reached out and I said, we may have seen this major declaration rejected, but I hope you would. And he said, I couldn't even finish the ask. He said, you got it. I'm signing off on that major disaster declaration in California. And I just think that's important. I'm a Democrat. I'm a proud Democrat. We have 100 plus lawsuits against the Trump administration, but there's got to be a way for all of us to be a hell of a lot less disagreeable when we're disagreeing. And so that's what keeps me up at night. I'm sitting, as I said, I'm sitting here at a desk with a baton that's passed from many different administrations, from Deukmejian, Wilson, Schwarzenegger, Reagan that I referenced, not just Democrats, Davis and Brown. And I'd like to think humbly that I can learn a lot from every single one of them and their travails, their challenges, their own journey. And so I just think we're all better off, and we're all better off. And I just hope cooler minds can prevail after November 3rd. This country is in real peril if we continue down this path.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's an area that's always bothered me, and it's certainly gotten worse. And it also leads into my last question, okay? And I'm going to read this question because this is the last question that Susan Page posed to the 2 vice presidential candidates last week in the debate. And I'd like to ask you the same question, since I really was not satisfied with either of the answers that the 2 candidates. So here you go, okay? This question was submitted by an 8th grader from Springfield, Utah. And it was a young lady, and she said, when I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizens fighting against citizens. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are our citizens supposed to get along? Governor, you addressed this issue a minute ago. What can we all do to really address a very serious problem in our country?
There's a wonderful billboard, I think was down at the 405 freeway, may have been up in Seattle, and it said, you're not stuck in traffic. Big, huge billboard, big sign, you're not stuck in traffic. And about 40 minutes later, you get within 100 yards closer to the billboard, and underneath the bold letter says, you're not stuck in traffic. It says, you are traffic, in parentheses. And it's a way of expressing this. Society becomes how we behave. We are our behaviors. And so the answer to the question is pretty damn simple. We need to model better behavior. It's not the guy or the gal on one white horse that needs to model the better behavior. All of us have a role and responsibility to model better behavior. Look, it is not wrong to criticize in a political construct the debate, but that's not going to go away. Good people are going to disagree during the heat of a battle, and ideological opinions will be expressed. That should not be what makes an 8th grader fearful and anxious. But when neighbors are turning against neighbors outside of the election process, that absolutely should fill one with anxiety. We all want to be protected. We all want to be connected. We all want to be respected. We all want to be loved, and we all want to love. It's universal. I'm a governor for all Californians. But I also think we all have to be citizens for each other, a commonwealth, a framework of communitarianism. There's no leak on your side of our boat.
Well, Governor, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your inspirational message. I think there's a message there for all of us. We got to become better listeners. We got to be more responsible for ourselves and not expect somebody else to take care of the problems that we are causing. So again, welcome to the Milken Institute. You've been with us before. Hopefully next year we'll do this one in person. And we are here to help you. And thank you and good luck with all that you have in front of you.
I appreciate it. Let me just close by saying thank you to the Milken Institute as well for all your counsel and advice across sectors for years and years and years. It's an extraordinary organization, and you're running a pretty remarkable foundation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.